Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to be showing you how to put a picture inside of text using GIMP. And I like to think of it as cutting out part of an image, because you'll see why I think of it that way when we get into how you do it. But in order to do that, we need two things. We need an image and we need some text. And we're going to use the text to cut out part of the image. And there's a lot of things that we could talk about in this video. I'm just going to stick with the one simple task, and you'll get the same results if you just do exactly what I do using your copy of GIMP. There may be some bugs if you're using the same version as mine, because I'm using the newest version and it's got some bugs in it from what I can see. But what I'm going to do is, you can either file, open, and go find an image on your computer, or you can just open up. You'll see I have, oh, that's not the right one. I have a window open over here that's got a bunch of images in it. I'm just going to drag one of those out of that folder, and I'm just going to drop it on GIMP, and GIMP's going to open it. So that's the easiest way. If you have GIMP open and you have an Explorer window, just drag the image over and drop it on there and it'll open it. Then you don't have to click 4 or 5 times to find where it is. If you've already found where it is, you don't have to open it with the file menu. You can just drag it over there and drop it. Now, so there's the image, and this is an image that belongs to me. It's my image. I own the rights to it. I generated it with AI, and that's allowable in the AI tool that I used. So no, we don't have to worry about. You can use whatever image you want, but since this one is just one that I can use, I figured I'd use it. So use whatever image you want, but what you want to do now is get that image open and then come up here and click on the text tool. And as you can see, it has a hotkey. I can't show you with my cursor at the same time as it being open, but if you look there where it says text tool, all the way out to the right there's the letter T. That's a shortcut key. And that means if you, while you're in GIMP, all you got to do is hit the T on your keyboard and it will open that tool. So you'll see when I hit the letter key, watch what happens right over here. I hit the letter T and it opened up that text menu or text panel. Now if I click this, the same thing happens. So they do the same thing, it's just two different ways to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a big heavy font, and we're going to write some text in a box, and then we're going to use it to punch out part of this picture. And to do that, we need to know what font we want to use. You can either browse through them by clicking this and scrolling around. You'll see as you do, you get kind of a preview of the font. See how big and bold Arial Black is? And then there's a batch of them right here on my machine that are all bold. I'm going to use one called Impact that's already installed on my machine. And you can install fonts that you get from like Google Fonts or other sites that provide free fonts. You can get those and download them and install them on your computer, and they'll show up in GIMP just like these are on my computer. I'm not going to get into that here, but there's another video on this channel that shows you how to do that. You might want to check that out. It'll probably be called, it's probably called something like, I can't remember what it's named, but it'll have something to do with fonts, Google Fonts install. If you put that in the search for my channel, you should find the video. It's relatively new enough that you're probably, when I'm recording this, it's probably a recent enough video to the beginning of this channel that there's not a whole lot of options. You'll probably see it in the list, but for down the road, if you're watching this years down the road, you might have to do a search for it. But at any rate, you can install whatever fonts you can get. You can install those on your computer and they'll show up in your software. So check that out if you're interested in getting your own fonts. But if you just want to see how this works, just use one that's there already. Once you can either scroll down and click it, or you can do a search, and then when it pops up you can click it and it will fill in this field with the font that you want to use. You can set the size, and you can set some of these other things that I usually just leave them like this. You can change the color, and you can use any color at all. I'm going to set this to white just because it'll be nice and bold when we're looking at it. You'll be able to see it real easy. So once you have this all configured the way you want it, just click on the image. It can be anywhere. We're going to have to move it anyway. So just click on the image and start typing the word you want to put. I'm going to use the word quality, and I'm going to write it in all caps so it's nice and heavy so that we can see the image inside of it. And then once you get the word written out the way you want it, just come up here with your cursor and click the move tool and select it. And you'll see it, all the focus now is not on the text panel, it's on the move tool. So now we can drag this thing around however we want. However, one thing I did forget to do is size this. So if that happened and you were following along, all you got to do, once you change the focus from the text, it still remains editable. You just got to go back into this mode and then come over here, and you'll see how it's not resizing. It's because I haven't told it which letters I want to resize. Like if I just select this one and then I start resizing it, you can resize just the one letter. You can do them individually is what I'm getting at. You can do them individually, or you can select all of them just by selecting them all, and then running this size up to wherever you want them to be. And that's what I should have done before I left the text tool, but I got a little ahead of my mouth and I did something before I told you about it. So now that we've done the step that I skipped a minute ago, we can come up here and click the move tool, and we can just put this where we want it. And I want to put it down here towards the bottom. I want most of the pool to be in the text. So that's where we want it to be. Now the question is, how do we get the image inside of the text? It's pretty simple, and there's multiple ways you can do this, and there's a lot of creative stuff that you can do, but I'm just showing you the basic how to get the image inside of the text right now. What you do is you come over here, and what we need to do is we need to create a selection around the text. That's what we're trying to do here. We want to select just the text on this layer. So when we typed out the text, it created it on its own layer. See how it's not on the same layer as the image, but we want to select just this text. Now you can do that a couple of ways. The way I normally do it is I hold down the Alt key while I click on this icon right here. This little inside this rectangle, I'll hold down the Alt key and I'll click that, and you see the marching ants are now around the word quality. But I've heard from other people that one of the bugs they had in their version was that wouldn't work. So if you right click on this same area and just come down here to alpha to selection, this one right here, and click that, it does the same thing. And if you notice, the little tooltip says what it does. If you point at it long enough, it'll tell you what it'll do. Replaces the selection with the layers alpha channel. The shortcut is Alt click on the thumbnail in the layers dockable, and that's what I normally do. I use the shortcut. Let's see if so the fact that said click on the icon, really you don't have to click the icon. You can I never even use the menu. I use the shortcut, so I didn't realize that, but you can right click anywhere on this layer and you can get that. But you're looking for alpha to selection if the hotkey or the shortcut, whatever you want to call it, if it doesn't work. Just come down here and click that and you'll select the text. The next step is the one where where it all happens. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this layer off. We don't want to operate on this layer. This is a text layer. We have a selection that's based on that layer, but we're not going to work on that layer. See how our selection's still visible? We can kind of see what part of the image is going to be still visible. But come down to the image, and then what you want to do is right click on the image or on that layer, and then come up here to add layer masks, and you'll get this add layer mask. That's what we're doing. We're masking this layer. So you'll get this dialog box that asks you, what do you want to use? You want to initialize the layer mask to. What do you want to use as the cookie cutter, so to speak? Well, we want to use the selection that we just made. You see up here, you can use white stuff, you can use black stuff, you can use the layer itself's alpha channel. These are all more advanced than what I'm showing you here. What we're just doing is we're taking a selection, and this will work with any text or any object really. You could use a rectangle, a square. There's a bunch of ways you could do it. You could do an oval, you could do a rectangle, you can anything that you can make a selection with. So that's why this is the way I use a lot, because it simplifies my workflow, so I don't have to remember every different version of how to do something. Selection, and then we're just going to make sure this is not checked. If this is checked, it's gonna leave you with the opposite of what you're trying to do. And we want to keep the word quality and lose everything else. We don't want to cut out the word quality and keep everything else. You may want to do that way, and if you do, just invert the mask when you make it. But we're going to keep it inside the selection and click add. And now we have our image inside of the word quality. Now, it's important to realize that the image is not gone. It's still there. We've just masked part of it and left it visible. And that's really the idea. You'll see over here on your layer, you have a mask layer, which is covering up everything inside of this area that has the pixels in it. And let me just show you what I'm talking about. If I right click this and I come up here to show layer masks, and let's see what's really happening. That's what's happening. We have this layer. So this is a mask layer, and on a mask layer, everything that's white reveals what's underneath it in GIMP. Everything black conceals everything that's beneath it. And because this is over the top of the other and the white is inside the word quality, then that's what you're going to see. And only when you show the layer masks do you see it that way. If you turn those off, it begins working as a mask and it does what it's supposed to do. But the idea here is I want you to understand that we haven't lost the image. If we right click in here and we disable the masks, you still have the whole image. And if you do this, there are other things that you may want to do to the text after you put an image inside of it. For example, what if I wanted to put a drop shadow on this? Well, you can do it, but you can't do it this way. Watch what happens when I'm going to turn this layer mask back on. And watch what happens if I try to put a drop shadow on this. First, let's deselect. Let's get rid of our selection by coming up here and selecting Select, None. So now our marching ants are gone, and we have just the text. But see how it's not really, the edges of the word aren't really clear. And a lot of times when I do this effect, I like to put either a border around the text, or I like to put a drop, something to make it, give it more contrast. from what it's over the top of. So what I usually do is put a drop shadow on it. Now you can do that if the layer is a certain way. And the way it is right now, you won't be able to do it. So if you had the idea, say you did this and you were like, oh, I'd like to put some drop shadow under that. And you came up here to filters, and then you come down here to light and shadow. You'll see the drop shadow. Now you can do the legacy one, but it's going to give you an error because it still won't work. It just doesn't know that yet. This new one already knows that it won't work. So what we need to do is we need to change up our layer so that we can only be working with these pixels and not have this more complex way of showing it to us. But to do that, we've got to destroy this image. So make sure you're working on a copy of it if you do it this way. I'll show you another way to do it here in a minute that doesn't destroy the image and that keeps your masking the way it is right now. But this way is the quick and dirty way. That's what I call it anyway. But what you want to do is we're going to right click on this mask, and then we're going to come over here to where is it? Right here, apply layer masks. That's what we want to do. We want to apply this mask to the layer. And when you click this, watch these two icons down here when you click it. See what happened? It threw away all the pixels that weren't visible, and it just kept the ones that are. So we don't have our mask anymore. We just have one layer that has these visible pixels, and the rest are transparent. And that's what you have to have if you're going to apply a drop shadow. So if you come up here now, you'll see the drop shadow is now, you can do it now. And if you click that, you'll see the drop shadow shows up, and you can come up here in this dialog box and you can configure it. Now let's say we just wanted to, you could leave it like that, or you can just make it darker, set these. I usually set this one, the blur radius, down low if I'm trying to create a nice crisp edge on something, and then I drop the distance down to where, and you can either drop it down real tight or you can put it on 0 and then just make the grow radius, depending on if you want to put, see, you do a border like that, you could put a border on it, or you can just leave this down at 0 and then just offset it a little bit to create this drop shadow effect only on one side. So that's pretty much how you, that's kind of a little bonus, putting the drop shadow on. It's a little bonus. That's not something that we talked about, but at any rate, I didn't save that, did I? I'm going to repeat that same thing. Actually, you can't repeat it because I didn't save it. So just, I'm going to go back to where we were just to show you what it actually does. If you come down here to drop shadow, and then you set these the way you want them. I usually crank that all the way up. Put this down to 0 and then set this at like, well, something that works. 2, 3, 4, somewhere in there. That works. If you don't hit OK, you're going to lose it, just like I did a minute ago. But if you click OK, now it saves it. And then let's say you were working and you wanted to reapply that same one. You could come up here and just repeat it like I did a minute ago. But I had used a different one before this one, so the one I usually use wasn't in the history. So anyway, that's how you do it if you don't mind destroying the layer. I told you we would see another way that was non-destructive, and I'm going to show you that one. So I hit Control Z a few times and I went one too far. So I'm going to deselect. I'm going to get rid of the selection by selecting none. So now we have our letters with the image in it, and we want to put a drop shadow on it without destroying this, see, we have our layer mask back, and we've got the whole image now. So if we want to disable the masks, we still have the image, and that's a thing that you might want to do if, let's say, you do something for a customer or something, and you want to show it to them, but you don't want to lose everything that you've done because you just might want to come back in and make some adjustments later. There are times when you don't want to destroy the layer, is my point. So this is how you can do a drop shadow effect without destroying it. You remember the text that we used to make the selection? If you still have that, you can use it to create the drop shadow. Now, to do that, we're going to have to select it again. So hold down Alt and click on the, so we have our selection, and we want to change this to the color of the drop shadow that we want to make. So I'm going to change this to black, and I'm going to use the paint bucket tool. The bucket fill tool is what it's called. I just call it a paint bucket. And then you come over here, and you can try to fill it in directly, but see what happens when you have to do each letter individually. What I like to do is I just create a new layer that's filled with transparency and put that over the top, and then now if you fill it in, it'll fill in all of them. And then you can either turn this one off or whatever. If you leave it on, it's going to be in your way, but if you turn it off, or you could, if you don't need it anymore, you could just merge these two. And the way you do a merge is you just select the layer that you want, and if you want to merge it with the one just below it, you just come down here and push this button right here, and it merges them. So now we have a black word over the top of our image. Now if we would have used black to start with, we wouldn't have to, we would have already had this, but we had to go back and make it because I used white instead of black. So if you use black, it'll cut out part of that step, those steps that we just did to get this from white to black. At any rate, pull this down and put it underneath the other one. Now what we want to do is, we don't want to do drop shadow, although you could come up here and just do drop shadow. Oh, you gotta, this will get you, it does me all the time anyway. I do this all the time. I forget that I have a selection, and when you have a selection, whatever you do in GIMP is only going to apply inside the selection. So when I ran that drop shadow, it didn't apply it because the selection is smaller than where the drop shadow is supposed to go. So if that happens to you, just look for these marching ants, and if they're somewhere on the page and a tool isn't working, it's probably because it has to, you have to get rid of that selection first. So I'm going to come up here to select, and I'm going to click none. The hotkey for that, by the way, is you can do Control Shift A and it will do the same thing. So now I should be able to run either the drop shadow, which we did a little bit ago, so I know it's already loaded right on that text underneath, right? So we ran a drop shadow on the black text. You could do that, and it works the same way as it would when you're doing it directly on the layer. Or another way to do it is, and this is the way I used to do it a long time ago when I was first starting, I would just put a blur on that text, because really what you're working with is this underneath an image. And if you put you go to filters and then do a blur, a Gaussian blur on it, then what you can do is you can set, now this doesn't give you, this always gives you a blurry drop shadow, but you get the idea. That's a glow, right? So, and then now with GIMP 3, you can, I don't remember being able to do this in 2, but now you can go in and edit your effects after the fact. You didn't used to be able to do this, But see, now I can go in there. I can go in there after, and it used to be once you set that effect, it was stuck, and you either had to go and create it again, or you had to do the Control Z thing until you got back to where you were. Now, after you create the effect, you can go in and edit it. This is more like how Photoshop works. It allows you to go in and make changes after you see what it looks like. For a long time, I couldn't do that, but with these newer versions of GIMP allow you to do it. So that's two ways to create a drop shadow or a glow, whatever you want to call it. That's a couple of ways that you can do it. So let's say I want to get rid of that effect. All I got to do is click on the FX button and get rid of it, and then I can go back to, I kind of like using the drop shadow, because if you do the settings right, you can also make it a heavy border. If I run this down to 0, run this up to a 1, and then change this to, actually I didn't have to run that 1 to 0. This grow radius, whatever I set that, see, I can put a border around the whole thing and it's nice and crisp. If that's what you want, that's how you do it. Otherwise, you could do a glow. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do different effects. But all of this was to show you how you can put an image inside of text using GIMP. So I hope that helps, and thanks for watching.